Jai Hind friends. Friends, today we are going to discuss regarding the mechanism of American presidential election. As most of my friends, including the American ones, are always interested in the presidential elections of United States, but they find it the system, the mechanism too complicated to understand. So today we will discuss it and we will try to make it as simple as possible. So as always, as usual, the same request I'm making to you: subscribe my channel, like the video, share it with your friends and family. Because what happens that I work out for so many hours to make these videos. First I research, then I try to declutter it, the topic, and then I come to you. And when the subscriber count and the like count increases, it gives me a boost up. So let's discuss the mechanism of the American presidential election. See, broadly speaking, there are 5 stages in an American presidential election. The number one is the primaries and caucuses, which is basically a party level election in the states. Number two is the national convention of each party. There are only two parties, which is Democrat and Republican party. So the national convention of each party occurs. After that, general election campaigning takes place, and which is being followed by general election, which we call as popular vote. Then popular vote occurs, and finally it is the electoral college, which is the most complex for most of the people to understand. What the thing is this electoral college and how it functions. So this electoral college and these electors, which constitute the electoral college, they vote for the presidential election. So before starting and before talking about every step, every stage of the presidential election, just look at the geography, political geography and topography of United States. See, the United States comprises of 50 states, and the most populated state is the state of California, and the largest in terms of area is the state of Texas. And why I am talking about the populous and also the area wise largest state, you will come to know later on when we will discuss in details. So let's start with the first stage, and the first stage is the primaries and the caucuses, that is the party level election in the states, in different states. So broadly speaking, the candidates who wins the primary and caucuses goes for the national general election. So to be nominated, to participate as the presidential runner, one has to clear the primaries and the caucuses in all the states of United States. So let's first talk about the caucuses. You can compare the caucuses with a local level of meeting of the registered members of a political party. That type of meeting can take place in a soccer stadium, it can take place in a community hall, it can take place in a hotel or anywhere. And here the members of the political party select their candidates for the general election, and 16 out of the 50 states of the United States, they hold caucuses. So in caucuses, the voting takes place by two ways. One is the secret ballot, and in places with very small population, the people they shift on two sides, they stand on two sides and elect there, and elect or select, whatever you say, it will be elected only. So they select the presidential runner from their party. So this is caucuses. And now coming to the primary, which is being held in most of the states. See, out of 50, only 16 states hold caucuses. Rest all are going for primaries. So regarding primary, it is also a state level election where party members or supporters, party supporters, or even members of the other party. In caucuses, what was happening? The registered party members used to elect, they are electing the presidential candidate from a particular party, namely the Republican or the Democrat. But what happens in primaries? In primary, the party members or party supporters or even a member of another party can vote for any party out of two, that is Democrat and Republican. And but it's not like that everywhere it is happening in the same manner. It happens as per the laws of the particular state. The laws of the primaries, for whom, whether it will be the member of the party, whether it will be a supporter of the party, or whether it can be a fresh member who has joined yesterday or itself, or it can even be a member from the Republican voting in the primaries of a Democrat, or vice versa. So, depending upon the laws of states, there are, broadly speaking, three types of primary. One is the closed primary, in which a secret ballot is used, and it is being used only by the members of the particular political party. Then it is there is a semi-closed primary, and in the semi-closed primary, even a fresh member of a party who have recently joined the party, say yesterday they have joined, or some minutes ago or some hours ago they have joined, they can also vote for the party. And the third category is the open type. In open type, irrespective of party you are belonging to, you may be a member of Democrat party, but you can even vote for the Republican party or vice versa. So I think you must have understood what is the difference between primary and what is the caucuses. Now coming to statistics, if we see the number of primary and caucuses voters in the year 2008, roughly 36 million Democrats have voted in these elections in year 2008, and 21 million Republicans have voted. So one can see one thing very clearly, that the Democrat voters are more interested in the primaries and caucuses as compared to the Republican ones. Now the question comes, who has to compete in these primaries and caucuses? The answer is very simple. Anybody and everybody who want to join the race to the White House has to compete in the caucuses and primaries. Even President Trump, who is right now the president, he has to compete in the primaries and the caucuses. Though vis-a-vis Republican Party, 7 states have said that we are not going to do the primaries and caucuses, and they are standing behind President Trump. But technically he has to compete, though the precedents are that presidents sail in the system very easily. It's very easy for a president to clear the primaries and caucuses. It's not a big deal for them. But for the those people who are not the president, it's a big race and they have to clear it. Now when coming to caucuses and primaries, you will constantly hear very media friendly terms which are being highlighted by the media, and people wonder what are they. The one is the Iowa caucus. It is being extensively used by the media, and people just scratch their head. What's the meaning of Iowa caucus and New Hampshire primary? See, Iowa, the state of Iowa, it holds the first presidential nominating contest, and the Iowa is being followed by other states which holds the early contest, which is the New Hampshire, which is the Nevada, and the South Carolina. And as per the law of the New Hampshire state, the New Hampshire must be the first states of United States to hold the primaries. And the law states very clearly, even if some state declares the dates of primaries before the New Hampshire, then by law the New Hampshire has to do its primary 7 days ahead of that state. So as far as the caucuses are concerned, Iowa is the first one. Rather, you can say Iowa is the first state in which this election procedure starts, and which is being followed by New Carolina, and then it is being followed by New Hampshire, and then it is being followed by South Carolina. And why it is the South Carolina very important? Because it is the playing field usually for the Republican Party because of the conservative nature of the population in South Carolina. Plus, it is the first state of the southern states who goes for voting. So what happens, this Iowa caucus, this New Hampshire primary, and which is being followed by Nevada and South Carolina, this sets the trend. They sets the trend that who is going to be the runner in the presidential election. And you see one thing, you will find that almost 60 to 70% of the candidates are rooted out in these 3-4 states on itself, so they don't go ahead for primary or caucuses in other states of the country. Then one term you will often hear is the Super Tuesday, and it is also related with primaries and caucuses. What is the Super Tuesday? Super Tuesday is simply a day in which the most of the states of the United States undergoes the procedure of primary or caucuses. And this time, bet me that this Super Tuesday is not going to be a Super Tuesday, rather it will be a Super Duper Tuesday, because the state of California, which is the most populated state of the United States, and it is also very important as far as the economics is concerned, is also voting on the same day. That is the Super Tuesday. So it is going to be a Super Duper Tuesday this time, and it will set the stage for the final race of White House between the two parties, that is the Republican as well as the Democrats. After the primaries and the national convention of each party, that is the Republican Party and the Democrat Party. And once the primaries and caucuses are done, a national convention is held in which a party's nomination for president is formally announced to the people of United States and the world. And during this convention, the elected delegates, remember one thing, whenever there is a caucuses, people do not vote directly for the presidential candidate there. What they vote for a delegate, and the job is to vote for the presidential candidate of the particular party. And this procedure is being done in the national convention of that party. So we can say that it's a direct democracy. If you talk about the in-party democracy, people what they do, they vote for the delegates, and these delegates in turn vote for the presidential candidate of either party, let it be Republican or Democrat. And similarly, even in general voting, on the popular vote, you will find the same, that people are not voting for directly for president or vice president. They are actually voting for electors. I will come to it later on. So, in the national, which are being elected by the, or they select the presidential candidate, presidential nominee for that particular party. Now, if you just go to the dates, the Republican Party will be having its national convention between 24th and 27th of 20. And the Democratic Party will hold its national convention between 13th and 16th of July. So we can say that roughly 15 days ahead of Republican Party, the Democrats will be having their national convention. And one thing is there, here the presidential candidates, they must have very good relation with these delegates. I'm not talking legally or constitutionally, but yes, politically, they must have very good rapport with these delegates or these local representatives, because no law stops can prevent them to switching the sides. So definitely they must have good rapport, and they maintain good rapport with these delegates from the political party, which are the local representatives of that political party in the national convention. Now, once the national convention is over and you have a person appointed as the presidential nominee for that particular party, that presidential candidate chooses his or her runner mate, that is the vice presidential candidate. And once all this full procedure is over, then starts the third stage of general election campaigning, and these presidential and vice presidential candidates from both the parties, they travel and campaign for with their ideas and what they want to do for their country and their people throughout the length and breadth of the nation. And there is huge media coverage, there is huge campaigning even on social media, in advertisement, in all possible ways they campaign in each and every state of the United States, so that they can galvanize the vote and vote and supporters for their party and for themselves. Now after this, the fourth stage is the general election, which is also known as the popular vote, and usually it occurs in the month of November. And this time in the 2020 presidential election, it is scheduled for 3rd of November 2020. And when the voters step into the ballot box to select their candidate for the presidency, they actually are casting a vote for a fellow American called elector. So they are voting basically for president and vice president, but they are selecting and electing an elector. I'll come to it again. And these voters, if you talk, most of them doesn't know that they will think they are voting for Bernie Sanders, or they must be voting for Mr. Trump. But in fact, they are voting for whom? They are voting for the electors, and these electors will be then selecting the president of the United States. And who is an elector? If you come, who is an elector? An elector is a member of the electoral college. These electors together they form an electoral college whose constitutional duty is to elect the president of the United States of America. And these electors, they took the pledge that they will be voting for the person for whom the people of their area has voted in the presidential election. Now, to win an election, our candidates need to secure more than 270 electoral votes. So, the candidate who has crossed the threshold of 270 electoral votes will go to the White House and the Oval Office. Now, the stage 5, which is the most important stage in the US presidential election, and usually people find it cluttered, is the electoral college. Some people are asking some question. I'll do it. I'll reply you in the end. Stage 5, that is the electoral college. And in this electoral college, the electors vote for the US president. This is the final stage. Stage 5 is the electoral college, and in this stage, the electors, they elect the president of United States of America. And the US president is elected by this institution, which is known as electoral college. And this procedure, it usually occurs in the month of December. The Constitution of the United States only states that the candidate who receives a majority of votes in the electoral college becomes the president of the country. It says nothing about the popular vote. So this is very important. As per the Constitution of the country, the person who receives the maximum of the electoral votes, electoral college votes, he or she becomes the president of the United States. The constitution mentions nothing about the popular vote, which people cast for their president and vice president. And it is highly possible, 5 times in the history it has occurred, that a person becomes a president of the United States without winning the popular vote, because they get the votes from the electoral college. They cross the mark of 270 votes. Once you cross the mark of 270 electoral college vote, you will win the presidential election irrespective of what you have gained in the popular vote. So each of the 50 of the 50 states of the US and the capital Washington DC. Remember, Washington DC is a district which does not belong to any of the state. They have a set number of electorals reflecting their size. Now, you look at the state like California, which is the most populated state with a population over 38 million people, and so rightly so, they are having the maximum number of electoral votes, that is 55 votes are only with the states of California. So California becomes a very vital state as far as the race to the White House is concerned, because out of 271 vote which is required to become the prime president of United States, the 55 vote comes from the state of California itself. On the other hand, there are states like Montana, whose area is wide, but the population is only 1 million or something like that. So they have just 3 electoral votes. So you can now understand how the entire game takes place, how the entire procedure takes place, and the candidate who wins the maximum votes or more votes from a particular state, he or she gets the whole bulk of electoral college vote of that particular state. Supposedly, President candidate X gets 2/3 of votes of California, and presidential candidate Y, he or she gets 1/3 of the votes of California. So X, who has got the 2/3 votes, don't go upon the count 2/3. It just states who gets more vote or maximum votes. So Mr. X or Miss X, who has got 2/3 votes, he or she will receive the entire bulk of 55 votes of California state in the electoral college. That's how that system works. So a candidate can have more votes throughout the country, but he or she may fail to harvest votes in the electoral college. And we should not forget the year 2002, which is unforgettable chapter in the US presidential history. What happened in 2000? Year 2000, first time in 112 years, the Republican candidate, that is George W. Bush, he got 47.87% of popular vote, and his rival, the Democrat candidate Al Gore got 48.38% of the popular vote. He was having roughly 5.5 lakh more votes than George Bush. But what happened? The battle came up till the state of Florida, because what happened? Mr. Bush just got 271 electoral college vote against 266 which were gained by Mr. Al Gore, and 271 is the mark to become the president. One who crosses the threshold of 270, he or she is in the White House. So finally what happened? It was a so tight contest that it went up till the state of Florida, and a recounting was done. Followed by the recounting, what happened? The case went into various courts of the Florida county, various county courts of the Florida state, and finally it was the Supreme Court of United States which delivered its judgment in favor of Mr. George W. Bush by 4 out of 5 judges, and the state of Florida was handed to Mr. George Bush, which meant that the White House was given or handed by the Supreme Court to Mr. George Bush. Similarly, in case of Donald Trump also, last election, Miss Hillary Clinton, she was having more of popular votes as compared to Mr. Donald Trump. But when it came to the Electoral College, Mr. Donald Trump won the election with the help of Electoral College. So it has happened 5 times in American presidential history that candidates became president without winning the popular vote. So why does the United States have an electoral college? That question automatically arises, and the short answer to it is the framers of the Constitution of United States did not trusted direct democracy, and they provided an extra layer of security to ensure that a right candidate is being sent to the White House for the post of the most powerful person on this world, in this world. So they added an extra layer of security that wrong person should not enter the Oval Office. So there are criticisms to the system. One big criticism is that states in which the start in the initial days, that is the Iowa caucus, then New Hampshire, followed by South Carolina, these states, what happens, the candidates who garner support from these states, they eventually lead the race, and the trailing ones, they are weeded out. And one more thing is often says that non-white candidates are not able to reach up till the states of New Mexico. Obama has stressed this argument. On the other hand, there is also one thing that there is hardly any media coverage after the Super Tuesday. So the election, the states which goes through caucuses and primaries after the Super Tuesday, they are hardly mentioned in the media, but democracy is ensured, and President Trump's success is a big example, a great example for the same, because you see, this man, he was being blamed even within the Republican Party. He was a newcomer in the politics, he was a businessman, but due to internal politics, internal democracy of the political party, he is a successor. Positive point is that by subjecting the candidates to the scrutiny of a few early states, the parties can weed out the unfit candidates. And one real positive aspect is that when the candidate first compete in the his communication with the people becomes rather personal, because the size of the state like Iowa is small, relatively small. So an underdog can be promoted up till the post of the president of United States. And remember Barack Obama, who was knowing Barack Obama before he won the Iowa caucuses. So this is a big boost for those people who are underfunded, who are little known,